Mr. Dube. Thank you so much, Mr. Dube. So I think let's kick off this interview with you, maybe also just sharing briefly your career background, as in where you're from, what you did in the industry, and what you're doing now.
Maybe if I can start, maybe I will start at my schooling. I completed my schooling in Mpumalanga. There's a township called Ganyamazane in Nelspruit.
Okay.
That's in Bombela now. After that, I went to UCT. You know, as young people, sometimes we battle with career guidance, you know. While I'm still at varsity, so I went to UCT. I spent a year there in Cape Town. I did my BSc degree. I didn't like it that much. And fortunately, I had a brother who was working for a mining company, and then he advised me that there's an opportunity. You know, mining companies are offering bursaries, and it looks like it's a very good career that you can actually pursue. Then there I decided that no, let me go and try mining. I knew nothing about mining.
Yeah.
You know, background-wise, I come from Soweto. Soweto is surrounded by mines, but you know, people from the township, they actually look down on the profession of mining, actually working on the mines. You know, it's very strange that you find people from Soweto, find people working on the mines, but there are very people that you'll find from the surrounding townships. But probably things have changed these days.
Yeah.
So I went to VETS and I completed in 1995. I went to join Anglo-American, the coal division, but I spent a lot of my time during my vacation work in the Free State area, in the gold mines. And before I joined Anglo-American as a scholarship holder, I used to be with Goldfields. So I spent a lot of time as well, part of the training in the gold sector. Then when I really started working after graduation in 1995, I went to join Anglo Coal. I was based in the Standerton area. The name of the mine is New Denmark. I spent about 3 to 4 years there. And then I developed the passion of health and safety. I joined the inspectorate in Mpumalanga. That was in 1998. Towards the end of 1998, I was based in Mpumalanga. I was there for some years as the inspector of mines. And I think it was in 2001, then I moved to KZN. I moved to KZN as a principal inspector of mines. I think I spent about 6 years there in KZN, running the regional office in KZN, which was also a good exposure in terms of operations, being responsible for a number of disciplines in KZN, basically running the province. In terms of health and safety, I stayed there, I think, almost about 6 years in KZN. Then I moved to the head office as a chief director that was also responsible for the number of provinces. I think I had 4 provinces when I left that were reporting to me. I think it was the Gauteng province, it was the Northern Cape province, it was the Eastern Cape province, I think the Western Cape as well.
Yeah.
So I got to be responsible for your onshore and offshore operations, mostly from the Western Cape in terms of the gas exploration there, and also basically mining in the provinces. You know, the actual mining as we know it, the onshore operations. And then I spent about how many years in the DMR, in the head office? I spent about, I think, almost 7 years, if I'm not mistaken, 6 to 7 years. And then I moved to the Mine Health and Safety Council as the CEO there. I've been there since 2013 until in April this year. So I spent about 8 years there. And then I've decided that I wanted to venture into something that I'm really passionate about, besides the mining aspect, which I mean, you know that once you've been a miner, you'll always be the miner. So there's something that I wanted to do, which is farming, which is something that I'm actually involved in.
Okay.
So I'm actually involved in the farm, and I'm in the process of getting the farm from where it is to a very nice commercial scale in terms of operations.
Okay.
So in my tenure in the department, I got exposed to a lot of things. You know, I think I don't for a second regret myself being part of the department. You know, while I was still in KZN, besides being responsible for a number of operations and engaging with various stakeholders like your other government departments, you organize employers within KZN, you organize labor, which is the unions, on matters that has to do with health and safety. I was also an examiner and a moderator for Mine Manager Certificate of Competence.
Oh, okay.
So I did that as well. And when I got to head office, I was given a number of responsibilities, you know, relating to procurement. It's a vast issues.
Yeah.
Especially on the technology side, dealing with the issues of new technologies in the industry. And I also serve at the Mine Health and Safety Council, where I was finally CEO as a board member of the Mine Health and Safety Council, I think for 7 years. And I was also a chairperson of SIMREC, which is an advisory committee on research, on mining research. So I think I was a chairperson for almost 7 years as well there, in terms of looking at new technologies and better ways of improving safety and technologies in the mining industry. I served there as well. And I also was given the opportunity to serve as its CEO in terms of coming up with strategies in terms of how we actually improve health and safety in the country, so that we can actually make investments in the country to be much more attractive. Because, you know, when you are able to manage health and safety, you know, it also provides your investors with confidence that, you know, we're not going to have a situation where we're going to be having disruptions in terms of production. And the more policies are very clear in terms of what government is expecting, the certainty as on part of the investors in terms of the expectations that they actually have in terms of where the country is. And I also would like to say that in my tenure, whether as a CEO of the Mine Health and Safety Council or as a member within the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, I've actually seen through my career the major reduction in terms of the accidents, of which in I think it was 2019, that was the year where we've recorded the lowest number of accidents ever recorded in the history of this country.
Yeah.
So I feel that I've made my little contribution as a team player in terms of making sure that the country moves in the right direction as far as occupational health and safety performance is concerned. I remember when we started in looking at the issue of benchmarking ourselves globally, we chose two countries. We chose the US and we chose Australia as a benchmark in terms of performance.
Yes.
I think at one stage we were performing better than the US, and Probably Australia as well, as far as the coal mining industry is concerned. You know, we might have been battling in terms of the hard rock industry, like your gold mines and your platinum mines. But South Africa is unique, especially when it comes to depth of mining. So we've got unique challenges, but that's not a good excuse of not outperforming the other countries that we've benchmarked ourselves. So I think there's a lot that has actually happened. And I think that is still continuing. You know, there's still continuation of the focus in terms of making sure that we become one of the best performing countries as far as looking at the issues of health and safety is concerned. So in brief, that is my history as far as my career is concerned, but it actually required a lot of dedication, you know, a lot of hard work. These things, they don't come easy, you know. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of pain that you have to go through for you to be able to achieve the results that the industry has actually achieved. It's not easy. The difficult part also is also the maintaining of those results. Continuous improvement, maintaining the best performance that we had the previous time.
Yeah.
So that's the difficult part. So, but I believe even if I'm no longer really participating in the industry to the extent that I was previously, the guys who are still there, they're still really pursuing that zero harm performance that they're actually looking at, which is something that the industry is actually striving for.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that very detailed explanation of your career trajectory. Look, for me, it is such an honor and a privilege to be sitting here and speaking to someone of your caliber. I mean, for instance, when you graduated from university, it was before even the establishment of the Mine Health and Safety, before the promulgation of the Mine Health and Safety Act and the establishment of the Mine Health and Safety Council, which you were leading. So it speaks really to the amount of experience you have and the amount of exposure you have in this mining industry. And it speaks to the maturity that you have in this industry. So that's why I titled this interview "A Matured Leadership." That is exactly why. See, now, I think for me personally, I get so fixated on okay, I'm in production, and at some point I want to be a manager. And how long is that going to take me? 8 years. Okay, how do I get to be a manager? And sometimes I even forget to think about the fact that, okay, after that 8 to 12 years and I get to being a manager, I'll have to answer the question, what now? You know? And it is really good to see people so matured and so experienced. I mean, you have, I think, 25 years of experience in this industry. And it's so good to be sitting here with my 3 months experience in the industry to speak to someone like you who has this 25 years experience and a lot of exposure, so much exposure in as much as you are and you have been an influencer of policy in the industry. A lot of the things like you just mentioned right now that at some point, the industry decided to benchmark itself against Australia and the USA. I didn't even have an idea that you were part of these decisions because I knew this. I've seen it in research papers that we've always been comparing ourselves to Australia and the USA, especially in coal, because that's the type of research that I like and go in depth into. And you were part of such decisions. A lot of research into the technology we use today a lot of the health and safety strategies that we use and implement today, you've been part of that. And again, I'm saying it is such an honor, to be here and speak to you on this platform. Thank you so much for availing yourself. So let me just ask you now a question. So now, amongst us, as in graduates of the mining engineering degree, there are people who feel like, being in production would be, not to be rude, but somewhat of a waste of their mental capacity. And they feel like there's way much more they can do with their brains that can do engineering. There are people amongst us who want to influence policy, who are not just into producing, who actually want to see change in the industry through their ideas being implemented, through their ideas influencing and changing policy. So my question is now, what does it take to do that? I mean, I know you went through production. Is that the route that should be taken? What does it take for someone who has that passion, I want to influence policy, not only in mine health and safety? There's also mineral economics, like you've also spoken about, research into technology in the mining industry. What does it take if someone wants to do that, other than the mine health and safety routes? What can they do?
Let me give you a piece of advice. Ne? It's very important that you spend a lot of time in the production arena. Because whatever policies that you are going to make, they need to be informed. You need to be exposed. The policies that you're not going to make, they need to be practical policies. When you come with policies, it's something that needs to be implementable. We don't want a situation when you come with things that are based on theory. When you take it to the industry, it becomes difficult for the industry to implement because of your lack of your exposure in terms of production. You need to understand what are the constraints, what are the limitations and all that. And for you to understand that, you need to be in the game. It's not something that they say experience you don't buy.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to go through so that you can understand, so that when you come up with something, even if when you come up with new technologies, your technologies that you are coming up with, they must be technologies that you know that when you going to be recommending the mines to use those technologies, even if you're going to sell those technologies to the mines, it must be something that can work. And how do you know whether something is going to work if you have not had the exposure? So you need to strike a balance. That is why I was saying that you've got a very good opportunity now that you have to get as much exposure that you can. Because let me tell you, you're going to be a manager. There's no question about that. But you don't want to look back and say, if I spend a little bit more time in production, there are certain things I would have learned. You're not going to learn everything. That is why when you get an opportunity like the one that you have, grab it with both hands, because you're not going to be there for too long. And what is also critical for you, besides your degree that you have as mining, you must also strive for your continuous personal improvement. Immediately after I've completed my degree, I think the main focus was for me to get my manager certificate of competency. I managed to get it. Immediately after I've got my manager certificate of competency, I came back to Wits to do a GDE in mineral economics. I initially wanted to complete it, to get it to an MSc level, but I couldn't get that opportunity. And then after a couple of years, I've registered to do my MPL, Masters in Business Leadership. Because I think they give you basic skills when you do your MBA, whatever course that you're going to do, management courses. In terms of they give you basic skills when you get into a management level. You know, there are basic things that we're able to understand, basic skills. The opportunity that I grabbed with both hands with the Mine Health and Safety Council, it was after I've got my MBL to say, now that I've got this qualification, how do I ground myself in terms of making sure that what I've actually learned at the master's level, it becomes ingrained into yourself beyond the theory that we were able to pick up in terms of passing the courses, you know. Once you start getting into executive level, you find that, you know, your overview is much more bigger. You're responsible for HR, you know, you oversee HR issues, you oversee ICT issues, you oversee finance issues, you oversee stakeholder management issues, compliance issues, governance, corporate governance issues. It's a broad spectrum. So what has assisted me is the exposure that I got through studying my MBL. And it actually assisted me, giving me the basics. Because what you get at the adversity level is basics. Then the actual work you actually learn at the workplace. So those things you become grounded, they become ingrained in you. So it doesn't matter what organization you get given opportunity to lead because of the exposure that we actually have. So what I actually did when I got to council, you know, I used to leave work very late at night, especially in your early days in a particular job. You need to make sure that you learn that organization, you understand it like the back of your hand. Because you will likely not going to get another opportunity to be able to do that. So I used to come home very late at night because I really applied myself, immerse myself in terms of making sure that I understand the organization that I'm leading. Because for you to be able to make improvements, you need to understand the organization, you need to understand the limitation. Once you understand that, it's then that you are in a much better position to say, these are the types of improvements that I would like to see. So whenever you're given the opportunity, apply yourself, immerse yourself in your job. It's not easy, but yeah, that's the type of person that I am.
Yeah.
The same thing that is happening now that I've joined the agricultural industry. It's a new industry for me. It's got all technicalities. There's a lot of learning that needs to happen. You really have to apply yourself.
Yeah.
So the minute you apply yourself, you see the learning process becomes much more quicker for you. Within a very short space of time, people, when they talk to you and engage with you, will be surprised to say, how long have you been in the industry? Said, I've been there for only maybe 2 years. Said, hey, man, the amount of knowledge that you have, it's amazing. So it's about your self-development as a person. You know, and while I was also in DMRE, I had an opportunity to come back to VES to do an executive development program as well.
Yeah.
So it's a continuous improvement. And what I'm planning to do, I'm also planning to do my PhD, but not in mining, but in agriculture. The reason why I want to do in agriculture, I need to do a lot of reading so that I can understand the industry that I'm in.
Okay. Okay. No, I see. Thank you very much, Mr. Dube. You answered my question beyond expectation. So just to sum up what you said there is that, you know, if you want to influence policy, you need to go first and spend some time in the production sector so that you understand, you know, the problems in order to develop solutions.
Yeah.
You do not want to find yourself trying to implement policy or influence policy in a direction where it cannot be implemented or executed by the ground, by the people actually doing the work, by the people who the policy is for.
That's very true.
Okay. All right. No, thank you for that. And just as we're still talking about your time in the DME, those are very senior positions you were talking about. I think you've even served as the Deputy Chief Inspector of Mines, meaning above you would be the Chief Inspector of Mines, who, if I'm not mistaken, is appointed by the Minister. And yeah, see, I don't know if it's a misconception or if it's a real thing, but positions that are that senior, I mean, between you and the minister now, it's only the DG, I would think. So my question is, for you to earn such a position or to be appointed to such a position, would you not have to be maybe somewhat politically affiliated or anything like that?
Fortunately, on my part, I did not have to do that. Because I don't think DMR works like that. They are basically looking at a skill, whether the person has a skill. It's not an issue whether we are close to political power or the political office. It's mostly about the skill that you are actually providing it's what people can see, the skills that we have actually possessing, and the potential that they actually see in you. Fortunately, we as DMR did not get into a position where people get appointed because they are very close to power or close to the ministers. It's mainly about the skill that you have. So it's an opportunity and it's an honor to work close with politicians. There's also things that you learn working close to politicians. It's a skill that you develop, how you deal with politicians, how do you manage your bosses and all that.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one, but it's a balancing act that you need to do. I mean, as a CEO, you basically of entities, because I was basically running an entity of government. We become very close to ministers. You report directly to the minister. For instance, MHSC is an advisory committee, is advisory council to the minister. So you get to be exposed to politicians, you get to be exposed to ministers. I think in my tenure as a CEO, I think I get exposed to about 3 ministers. And in the DMRE, I don't know how many ministers, probably close to 10 ministers that you get exposed to. So you also understand the political dynamics in the country. I mean, ministers are political heads within the departments.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to communities and when it comes to stakeholders that they serve. You also need to be able to be in the position to really assist them in terms of them delivering on their mandate as well. So it's also part of that exposure. That's why I was saying to you that, I don't regret a second that I spent in the DMRE. The exposure that I had. Another good exposure that I had is the international travel and also the global engagements that we have, going to Australia, going to the US, going to Canada, going to China to engage with your counterparts there. And participating in conferences, participating in expertise exchange between countries and all that. It's something that is great. You get exposed what other countries are doing and what is it that you can actually do for your country, because sometimes for instance, DMRE wanted to start the issue of the fracking for gas.
Okay.
In the country, we don't have expertise in that. We had to go to Canada to actually learn how it's done. It's done at a very high commercial scale in Canada in terms of the fracking for gas, which is actually happening in the Karoo. So you actually learn new things. You get exposed to what other countries doing, what other institutions, what other governments are doing. So it's something that is the experience that you can't get anyway. So yeah, I'm really glad in the terms of the exposure that I had over the years.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. I mean, it certainly clears up some of maybe then the misconception that we have. As soon as you start thinking about office and government and such senior roles, I mean, you work very closely to the minister. You cannot avoid thinking about, okay, do I need to have some political affiliation to do this? Because maybe if you want to influence policy, that's the first thing you try to think about. Must I be close to power? But you certainly did clear a few things up for me there, and I'm very happy with your answer. So then let me move to my next question then. So on the issue now of politics, would you think then that if you want to go this direction, you want to move through the route of going inspectorate and then going chief inspector and maybe even serve another arm of the tripartite, maybe MQA or something? Do you think that as a young person who's looking at doing that in the near future, they should develop some interest in politics, not being close to power, but just, the dynamics of politics? Because I would think, like you said, that when you deal or work at that level, so close to political heads, there's a lot of, political dynamics going on there, and you'd have to understand and be able to manage them.
Yeah, I think the understanding of political dynamics in the country, the developments that are happening, it's very important. Because you'll find that the political heads are going to be putting a lot of reliance on you as a technical person. So you need to understand where they're coming from politically. To say, maybe, for example, there is an issue. Let's look at the recent one in KZN in terms of the issue of people thinking that we've got diamonds there. I think it was around Lady Smith.
Yes.
How do you deal with communities? How do you manage a situation of that nature? When people they feel that there's an opportunity for them to get out of poverty, and then suddenly they are there looking for diamonds, and how do you discourage them or to tell them? How do you manage that? How do you manage a situation where you can actually communicate and say, communities is not really what you think it is? Especially when you have a situation of unemployment in the country. How do you manage that? You are a technical person, and you see the key thing is that as a technical person, what is also important is that how do you engage with people? How do you communicate with them? How do you communicate with them to extend that they understand? How do you get to the level of their understanding? With your technical background. So I think when it comes to political principles as well, they've got a mandate in terms of constituencies that they serve. They'll maybe give you a broad, objective to say, this is what you want to do for the community. And then how do you translate that into technical, practical things that can actually be done to be able to assist politicians in delivering in terms of their promises and in terms of their mandate. So that's the key for me.
Mm.
So you also need to understand what is happening around you politically, the dynamics, different parties, you'll have to deal with issues from different parties complaining, and it gets complex, but with time you get to learn about it. But you see, you can't be very naive about what is happening politically. You need to be very vigilant about what is happening. But what is also important as a public servant, you can't be seen to be taking sides politically. It doesn't matter what is your political home, so to speak. That's the delicate balance that you need to actually have. Politicians can actually openly do that, but when as a public servant and as a professional, you can't be seen to be doing that. It doesn't matter, where your loyalty lies. So those are the things that you actually learn in terms of how you manage those type of dynamics.
Okay, no, thank you so much again for that. Very well answered on my side. Let me just ask now. So let's say then for someone who wants to be a policy influencer, I see you developed a passion for mine health and safety, and hence you decided to go that route and decided to influence policy on that angle of mine health and safety. So for someone who is different but still wants to influence policy, for instance, someone who's more interested in mineral economics, someone who's more interested in exploration, for instance, and they want to serve in the DME, or they want to serve in the DME or maybe an entity of government that's going to allow them to influence policy. What other opportunities other than serving in the tripartite, other than serving in the MQA, the Mine Health and Safety Council, and the inspectorate, what other directions can one take in the DME to make that dream a reality?
I think there are a number of options that are there. It's either we are in government, you can be in your organized labor, in your unions, you can be with the employers, because they also have a role in terms of influencing policy. So it depends what route you want to take. If you are in government, it depends whether it's mine health and safety. It might be mineral economics, might be mineral regulation, it might be investments in mining. There's a very broad spectrum that you can actually get involved in. It's either you come from the side of the employers, assisting the employers as one of people that will probably get deployed in relevant committees and relevant structures that are actually assisting in terms of the influence of policy, or you come from the union side, you might be one of the representative or one of the technical people from the unions. You also have an opportunity to influence policy from that side, ranging from mine health and safety, your normal mineral policy, mineral regulation, mineral economics, mining investments. It's very broad. And then in terms of participating also, you find a lot of mining engineers that are working for banks, especially when it coming to mining investments. In the mining investment area, they also play a very important role in there. Depending what you do, there's always an opportunity to be able to have an influence in terms of the policy direction of the country. So there are lots that there's a lot of opportunities available there.
Okay, all right. No, thank you again. I mean, I just wanted to shed some light in that, because I don't think this direction of policy influencing is spoken about enough, especially by us as graduates, and even when we were in university. Some of us graduated thinking, okay, we're graduating now. The only options you have is either you go to production, you can go to consulting, or you can work for a bank, But in actuality of fact, there's a lot of opportunities. You can influence policy. I mean, I know for a fact that there are people who think a lot about that space of influencing policies. I know of people who like to talk about exploration, how we're going to solve our exploration and investment problem into mining. Coal, we have an issue that side. So I know for a fact that there are a lot of people who think about that, and I just wanted to maybe shed some light on that. And then thank you for that. So I think we're nearing the end of the interview, and I just wanted to ask, with that MMC you got when you were still working in production, how much of that expertise came in handy when you were working in the inspectorate? For instance, when you were an inspector of mines, when you were a principal inspector of mines, how much of that expertise of being competent to manage a mine worked for you when you were playing those roles?
I was an examiner for mine managers for 7 years now.
Okay.
Both as a person who set question papers for mine manager certificate, the legal part, and also as a moderator, looking at the questions that have been said by other colleagues to say whether the questions are fair, and also doing remarks. You see, that is why I was at the beginning of the interview, I was encouraging you to learn as much as you can. Because what actually happened when you go in to sit for your mine manager certificate, it's not about what you memorize. You can go through the law book, page by page, from the first page to the last page, and try and memorize. What they're actually going to be testing you is your understanding. To say, when you talk about law, practically, how do you actually apply, given a situation that you are finding yourself on the mine? If you have not had enough time in terms of the practical exposure, you're going to battle. So please do yourself a favor, get exposed as much as you can, practically. Because what they're actually testing is your understanding. You need to have a broad understanding in terms of the operations on the mine. Your understanding needs to range. I'm now talking about health and safety, your engineering aspect, your mining aspects, your occupational hygiene aspect, environmental engineering, your medical aspects in terms of the requirements that you need to have. So you need to have a much broader understanding in terms of what is actually required. So your exposure into different areas, it actually assists you to have a much more broader understanding in terms of the operations that you have. the different aspects of the operations on the mine. So it's extremely critical, your exposure. Because if you don't have the right exposure, if you have not spent enough time in production, you see, you have a theoretical understanding, but the practical understanding of issues, when they give you a scenario, you cannot put it in a practical sense. It still stays theoretically in your mind, and that's where most of the candidates they come short on. So it's very critical that you get the exposure. That's why I'm telling you, I've been through the whole process. I've been through the mill, so I understand the limitations, but unfortunately, some of us, we never had an opportunity for people who were before us to tell us, to say, hey, you know what, bro, make sure that these are the steps that you go through. Please don't skip them. Because you're going to need the experience that is in part of those steps that you have to go through. So it's very critical, your exposure, because even when you read, I'm just going to make a typical, when you read a law book, it makes a lot more sense when you are reading it theoretically from the person that has been exposed. How you read it, your understanding of issues is totally different from somebody who's totally not exposed to somebody who has a practical experience in terms of dealing with issues. So that's where the difference comes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you again, Thabo Dube. Let me just ask my second to last question now. This one now speaks to graduates. So when you graduated from Wits University with your mining engineering degree in '95, like I've already said, there was no Mine Health and Safety Council at that time, because I think it was only established in '96. So, but then over time you grew to come and serve and lead the Mine Health and Safety Council. So do you think now that for people who are exiting the university system now, there are opportunities opportunities that are not even in the industry as yet, that they will come to champion at a later stage when maybe they are more experienced and have got bigger spectrum in the industry?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot more opportunities. And I think the industry is actually changing. And I think it's going to be changing very fast. I mean, if you look at 4IR technology, the type of miners that we have today, or that we had in 1995, is going to be totally different.
Yeah.
So the biggest area of growth, I think, is going to be technologies. It's going to be in an area of technology. There's probably going to be some, but the policy is also going to be influenced by the technologies that are there, because the policy is also not static. It needs to respond to the issue, to what is actually happening in the industry. So the biggest change that I see is going to be on technology. That is going to be one. The other area that I see that is going to be influencing the changes is also going to be issues of culture in the industry. The culture is going to change. You are going to be having different cohorts that are going to be coming into the industry. So those are the areas where the changes are going to be, major changes that are going to be coming from. In 1996, 1995, there was a need for policy change in the country. The new government came into power. There were challenges in terms of health and safety. I think a lot of work has actually been done. I mean, when you compare ourselves with other countries, we are on par. in terms of policy development if you're not the best in terms of policy development. But I see the biggest change is going to be on technology with the 4IR. That is already with us. In terms of how you manage people, because the technical aspect will be able to deal with the technical aspect. I think in terms of introduction of new technologies, there's a lot of new technologies that have been introduced. But in terms of how these technologies are going to be impacting on people, including the jobs in the industry. So that is going to be the biggest change, including the type of labor that is going to be employed in the industry. You know, we used to have machine operators and all that. I mean, you're going to get to a stage where you'll be operating the machine sitting at home, you know, with a joystick, with a screen in front of you. People, you don't even have to be on the mine. Probably people who need to be on the mine are people who are going to be doing maintenance on the machine if you're not going to be getting robots doing maintenance on the mine. So that's where the industry is going. So those are the changes. Those are the major changes that I'm seeing.
Okay. No, I see. Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like my time is running away.
That's fine.
Yeah. Let me just ask now. So now, speaking to the graduates, from your point now, you've got 25 years of experience, and you're sitting back now. You've even left the industry, and there comes someone like me with a mere 3 months in the game. You have spoken a bit to me, but in general, what message can you give to graduates right now? First, that's the first question. And then the second question, with the graduate absorption rates by the industry being so low, you know, you'll find that a lot of people are sitting at home disheartened, you know, not being able to find the opportunity to express themselves in the industry. My question to you now is, what do you have to also say to the graduates who's sitting at home, not finding employment, and is looking, but it's just not there because opportunity is very scarce these days?
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing. You know, when we started in the industry, we were very fortunate. You know, by the time you do your 4th year at varsity, your final year, there were about 3 or 4 companies competing to have you. So you had letters, 3 letters or 4 letters. You had to choose which one you want to go to, but it's not the case anymore. So I think besides the graduates that are there, as industry principals, we also need to really come to some sort of assistance. Because so what is critical is the exposure that I'm talking about. So the job security is not going to be there for a very long time for graduates. The situation is different. So that I think what is going to be assisting is that, you know, because you can't skip I don't believe you can skip these steps of actually getting the exposure. You know, it might not be for a very long time. I think we need to try as an industry to expose our graduates as much as we can. But I think the mindset needs to change from the graduates. The situation is no longer the same as it was 25 years ago. They need to leave the varsity, going to the mines, also thinking about them being employers, being entrepreneurs, being the ones that are going to be creating jobs. With us, the mindset was not like that. You know, when you were trained as an engineer, you were trained that you're going to be, when you finish here, you're going to work, you're going to be a mine manager, you're going to be a general manager. That's what most of us aspire to be. But the situation has actually changed. I think there are opportunities beyond our country. I mean, if you look at the countries like your UK, you look at Germany, you know, they used to be major mining countries in the past. But the type of exports that they are taking to us here in South Africa and other countries is technologies. You know, the types of machines that we actually use for mining, it's either they come from Germany or they come from UK. Even if there's not a lot of mining opportunities in terms of work that is available in those countries, they've actually transformed themselves. I mean, even today, they're still producing mining graduates. There's not a lot of mining activity. I think the mindset that actually needs to change at tertiary level is the entrepreneurial aspect that needs to come in. To say, we're not going to be very long in the industry, but maybe the industry will give you the necessary exposure to be able to start your own mining companies, to be able to start your own companies that can supply services to the mining industry, not only in South Africa, but globally. I mean, Africa is opening up in terms of mining. South America is opening up in terms of mining. So there are a lot of opportunities that are out there. So we need to grab those opportunities with both hands, with the more than hundreds of years of experience that we have in mining, with mining in this country, and the quality of the graduates that we are actually producing. So that's the challenge there that we have. But I think with time, I think that's one of the things that I would like to do, especially as to volunteer and do, especially when it comes to mining graduates who are not employed. I had some initiatives while I was still at MHSC, but I had some limitation in terms of what I could possibly do. I had to take some of the mining graduates, some of them, we placed them on the mines as rock engineers, you know. We try all sorts of things, but I think we really need to come together. I know there's a lot of initiatives that are happening out there, you know, but I don't think we, as ex-graduates from VETS, I'm not so sure whether we are doing enough to look after the new ones who are actually coming out of varsity. So that we don't get a situation where we've got frustrated graduates who are actually sitting at home. I think there's a lot that needs to be done. So I also need some time to stabilize in terms of what I've started. I think that if there's anything that I'm going to be doing in terms of volunteering my time, that's the part that I'm going to be focusing on. In terms of looking after the graduates, because I think we are sitting with the potential in terms of economic growth, creating jobs, that is actually sitting there with the graduates that we're actually producing on an annual basis. So that's a project for another time. It's not an immediate one, but it's something that I'm really passionate about. That I haven't really got myself. I tried to do something while I was still as a CEO, but I felt that, you know, in the space that I'm in, I couldn't do as much as I would like to have done.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
I see. No, again, we'll have to thank you for that as well. I mean, there's not a lot of people who are passionate about that. So when we do see one and we do find one who is passionate as you are, and is willing to give their time to help a graduate, I mean, we are very appreciative and grateful for that. And then you answered the question on what you'd have to say to a graduate who's not finding work, but now in general, to any graduates working or not who's listening to this, what would be your message or advice to them?
My advice to graduates, you know, when you are a graduate, there's this tendency that I'm a graduate, there are certain types of job that you don't want to do. And you feel sometimes that when you're given those tasks, you know, you are being ill-treated. You know, people they don't appreciate the skills that you were able to pick up all the 4 years that you've been at varsity. My advice to that is that when you're given that opportunity, please grab it with both hands. Obviously, there's a limitation of time. We're not going to be doing those type of things forever. You know, grab those opportunities, learn as much as you can. If you are given opportunities to learn, grab it with both hands. Because at the later stage, whether you become a consultant, become an executive, you become a manager, you're going to be relying on those types of skills. So you need to get yourself to a situation where somebody tells you that I can't do something. You need to be saying, let me show you how to do it. When somebody comes to you and say, this thing is not doable, you said, okay, let me show you how to do it. You know, yeah, you need to get to that position so that you are actually comfortable, so that people don't take you for a ride and say, no, certain things are not doable. But because of your lack of exposure, you'll tend to accept those things. But I think what is key and what is also lacking, what we have been saying is that, you know, most of the graduates, they want exposure, but they don't get an opportunity to get exposed. But for the few that has exposure or an opportunity to be exposed, please grab it with your both hands. Because the rate that you are going to move through the industry, through the rank and the industry, is probably going to be quicker, to the extent that you might skip certain steps, and you might look back and say, if I spend a little bit more time there, understanding what is actually happening. Because once you become a consultant, people are going to be relying on you. So you need to be talking from the experience, you know. So, but it's not all lost with the graduates. I wish I had the time now to can actually spend on the initiative and actually start using my contacts that I have of other people who are actually involved in these various initiatives of assisting graduates. But it's not all lost. I think it's a question of us coming together and say, how do we assist these young people?
All right. No, I think I've come to my very last question. So let me just take this opportunity and just say it has been a privilege. It has been an honor to sit here and speak to someone of your caliber. Thank you so much for your time. And I know this conversation we had here is going to assist a lot of people. So again, thank you.
No, you're welcome, and thanks for making time to have a chat with me and giving me this opportunity to share a bit of my experience with yourself.
All right. It's a pleasure for myself as well.
Okay.